They said the warnings of Padre Pio were sealed, forgotten, locked away for another age. But heaven never forgets. And now, in this very hour, the signs he saw in the Spirit are rising like fire over the earth. For decades, the Church was told, do not open the final letters. But prophecy cannot be buried. It burns through time. And as the world trembles, one name now echoes across both the Vatican and the heavens, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a man of light. And yet, a man standing at the edge of divine confrontation. Because Padre Pio once spoke of 3 final signs before the cleansing of the bride, and tonight those very signs are aligning before our eyes. The first, already revealed. The second, unfolding in silence. The third, waiting for the world to awaken. This is not politics. This is not rumor. This is prophecy in motion. Something sacred is happening within the walls of Rome. Behind closed doors, whispers rise between those who wear scarlet robes, as if they already sense what is coming, a shift, a revelation, a trial of faith that will shake even the strongest among them. And in the center stands Luis Tagle, humble, radiant, chosen for mercy, yet now placed in a moment that will test the heart of the Church itself. They say Padre Pio's final vision ended in tears. But maybe those tears were not of sorrow, but of recognition. Recognition of this very generation, of us, of now. The world does not see it, but heaven does. The Church is standing at a crossroad of light and deception, truth and illusion. And the voice of Christ still calls, "Do not fear, for I am with you." So I ask you, are we watching the 3 final signs unfold before our eyes? Are we seeing prophecy becoming reality? Or have we become too blind to see the hour we stand in? One thing is certain, heaven is no longer silent. This is the voice of warning. This is the hour of decision. This is the time of separation. He who has ears, let him hear. The air in Rome has changed. Even the stones of St. Peter's seem to tremble, as if they can feel what human eyes cannot see. In the hidden corridors of the Vatican, whispers rise, of meetings that never make the news, of letters that never see daylight, of a struggle between light and shadow that runs deeper than anyone dares to admit. The first sign was not in the sky but in the silence, a silence that fell after a decision that few understood, when certain documents vanished from the archives and when those who sought to speak were silenced. Gently but firmly. It was then that some within the Curia began to sense it. Something old was returning. The same battle that Padre Pio saw in his final vision. A battle not of swords but of faith, not of nations, but of souls. And in that silence, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle began to rise, not by ambition, but by grace. A voice of tenderness in a time of thunder, a bridge between east and west, mercy and truth. But even bridges can burn when the fire of prophecy descends, because Padre Pio once spoke of a man of light surrounded by shadows, a man who would stand between 2 worlds, loved by heaven, questioned by men. And when that man stood before the successor of Peter, prophecy would move from paper to reality. And now, under the reign of Pope Leo XIV, that moment has come. The second sign came not with trumpet or lightning, but with division, a division so subtle that only the spiritual could sense it, between those who seek holiness and those who seek influence, between those who kneel before Christ and those who kneel before their own reflection. Some call it renewal, others call it rebellion, but prophecy calls it the great sifting of hearts. Within the Vatican, alliances form and crumble. Old names reappear. Letters bearing seals are exchanged under moonlight. And one question echoes through the marble halls: who truly guards the bride of Christ? Pope Leo XIV, weary yet watchful, has begun to sense the tremor. He has spoken of hunger as a moral wound, but deeper wounds are forming beneath his very feet. He seeks unity, yet unity cannot exist where truth is divided. The third sign is the one Padre Pio feared the most. He saw it not in words, but in images. A chalice overturned, a flame upon the altar, and a voice crying from within the church itself, "My own have wounded me, And now, as global storms rage, and both literal and spiritual, many begin to wonder, is that moment upon us? Because what began as quiet reform has become a war of ideologies. Inside the Vatican, some whisper that the age of hidden purity must end. Others insist that mercy must be without boundaries, and between them stands the cross, bleeding, silent, unmoved. Cardinal Tagle, the humble shepherd from the Philippines, now walks a path laced with both grace and danger. His compassion wins hearts, but his silence raises questions. What does he know? What has he seen? And why do some fear that he carries knowledge of the third sign itself? Some say he carries a letter, one written long ago, sealed by Pius XIV, touched by Padre Pio's own hand. A letter describing the final purification of the bride of Christ, when faith would be tested not by persecution from outside, but by deception from within, and those who remain faithful will not stand by titles or ranks, but by fire and truth, because the bride of Christ, the Holy Church, is being prepared, purified, not destroyed, but refined through tribulation. And it is here, in this collision of light and darkness, that heaven begins to separate the wheat from the chaff, the loyal from the lukewarm, the true shepherds from those who only wear the garments of one. Do you see it now? Every headline, every scandal, every quiet resignation, every sudden death. They are not coincidences. They are echoes of the same prophecy Padre Pio carried in his bleeding hands. And as the Pope faces rising storms, famine, deception, division, the faithful are being called to a decision. Will we stand with the cross, even if the cross stands alone? Will we defend the truth, even when the truth costs us everything? Because prophecy has never been about prediction. It has always been about preparation. And the time of preparation is closing. The hour is dark. But darkness always trembles before dawn. Padre Pio said, "When the world believes the church is dying, she will rise again more radiant than ever before." And that resurrection begins with those who refuse to bow to fear. The bride of Christ is not finished. She is awakening. Her pain is labor, not death. And through her agony, heaven is writing its final message to humanity. The signs are not coming. They are here. And those who can feel it know that this moment is no longer a warning. It is a revelation. The storm over Rome deepened. Thunder rolled across the Tiber like the heartbeat of heaven itself. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Inside the apostolic palace, a single lamp still burned. Pope Leo XIV sat alone, his hands trembling above an unopened envelope, marked only with a crimson seal and 3 words, ad lucem veritatis, to the light of truth. He had delayed breaking that seal for weeks, because he already knew whose handwriting was inside, Padre Pio. The letter, preserved for generations, had been entrusted to one man after another, waiting for the pontiff of a time of shaking. Every pope before him had read only fragments, but Leo would read it all. He opened it, and the moment the wax broke, the bells of Rome began to ring, without human hands. In the letter was not a curse, but a mirror. It spoke of the church entering her passion, betrayed from within, mocked by the world, pierced by her own. And through that passion, her glory would be reborn. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle felt a weight pressing on his chest. For nights he had dreamed of 3 lights rising over St. Peter's, one white, one red, one gold. He thought it mere fatigue. But now the dream returned with sound, a voice saying, "You will walk where Peter walked, and you will see what John saw." At dawn, he received a call from the papal secretary. The Holy Father wanted him immediately. Tagle crossed the cobblestone courtyard, wind tearing at his cassock, as if creation itself urged him forward. Inside, Leo XIV handed him the letter. "You must read this," the Pope said. "What is it?" Tagle whispered. "The third sign," Leo answered. Tagle read aloud, "When the altar trembles and the world mocks her shepherds, the heart of the church will seem to die. But the faithful remnant shall rise, not by might but by mercy. Suddenly the floor shook, a mild quake rippling beneath Rome. The lamp flickered. And in that instant, both men fell to their knees, because they saw just for a moment what Padre Pio had seen, the bride of Christ, wounded, but radiant, standing in light brighter than the sun. Outside, reporters would later speak of a minor tremor, nothing unusual. But within those marble walls, prophecy had shifted from parchment to living fire. Across the world, signs multiplied. A statue of the Sacred Heart in Manila wept water, not blood. In Lisbon, the sky turned crimson at twilight and formed a cross of light that lingered for 3 minutes. In Buenos Aires, a priest dying of cancer awoke healed after whispering, "Fiat lux ecclesiae." Let there be light in the church. Skeptics scoffed, the faithful wept, and Rome remained silent. Yet inside that silence, the factions moved. Some cardinals whispered that Leo's mystical bent would destroy the church's credibility. Others whispered that Tagle was chosen for something far greater, to lead the flock through a coming storm of purification. Files disappeared. Confidants resigned. But in secret, Leo and Tagle worked side by side, drafting a document that no one expected, ad revelandum caritatem, to reveal love itself. It would not reform laws or liturgies. It would call the church to confession, every bishop, every cleric, every soul. It would strip away titles and power and speak the oldest truth. Without holiness, there is no future. The plan was to release it on the feast of Christ the King. But on the eve of its publication, Leo XIII vanished from public view. The Vatican press office said he was resting. Tagle knew better. The Pope had gone into the underground chapel beneath St. John Lateran, the same place where Padre Pio once prayed unseen. He had gone to lay the church and his own papacy before the cross. Hours later, lightning struck the dome of St. Peter's again. The power failed, and when the lights returned, the Pope was found kneeling before the Blessed Sacrament, motionless, eyes lifted toward heaven, alive but changed. When he finally spoke, his first words were not his own. They were written centuries earlier in that same letter. "The bride has entered her night, but the dawn already bleeds through the veil." Then he handed Tagle a simple wooden rosary and said, "Take this to the people. Tell them the church will not fall. She will be crucified, and then she will rise." That night, Cardinal Tagle walked out into St. Peter's Square, rain pouring, crowds gathering, news cameras blinking. He raised the rosary toward the storm and spoke only 4 words. "The signs are fulfilled." And in that instant, thunder broke, not with destruction, but with song. The bells of every basilica in Rome began to ring together, perfectly synchronized, though no one touched them. The rain turned to silver mist, and in the clouds above, the Vatican, the outline of a cross shone for a single heartbeat, before fading back into night. The world called it coincidence. The faithful called it mercy. But those who truly understood fell to their knees, because they knew the secret. The final prophecy of Padre Pio was never about disaster. It was about resurrection. The bride of Christ, purified by trial, clothed in light, had begun to awaken. The war of shadows inside the Vatican was not her end. It was her renewal. And somewhere beyond the thunder, a voice whispered across creation, "Behold, I make all things new."